When ARK Survival Evolved released on Nintendo Switch back in 2018, I reviewed it, and gave it a 2.5 out of 10. I wasn't the only one either. The Switch version was universally panned. It was arguably one of the games most responsible for determining exactly where the bar was in terms of compromises in a Switch port. The Switch version was so abysmal that it was ultimately never updated beyond the first map, and various live service events offering exclusive skins and other bonuses simply skipped that version. ARK became somewhat of a joke around the NWR office as the go-to example of a disastrous Switch port. So imagine my surprise when earlier this year, Wildcard Studios announced that they had partnered with a new developer to re-port ARK to the Switch. No fixing up the old version, just starting over and releasing that as an update that would completely replace the old version. Not only that, but the game would be brought up to par in terms of content with all other versions. I was skeptical. ARK is a large game that was never particularly well optimized on PC, and that tended to carry over into the console versions. It's always been a game that relies more on brute force than anything else to get it running. But earlier this month, I had a chance to sit down with Jordan and Vince of Grove Street Games, the studio working on the new Switch version, and I have to admit, I was impressed. I'll have a much deeper technical look at what's been updated once I can get my hands on the final code for this version and do some one-to-one comparisons, but I wanted to quickly cover the most obvious changes. Perhaps the most immediately apparent is the significant boost in image quality. The 2018 version of ARK generally hovered around 360p docked. It could fluctuate somewhat, given what was on screen, but never made it even into the realm of 480p. Handheld mode generally operated at or below 240p. For those who don't know their resolutions, we're talking about a pixel count that, at best, reaches the resolution of a Nintendo 64. All of this was arguably made worse by some form of temporal anti-aliasing, which resulted in a blurry and extremely ghosted image at those low resolutions. This 2022 version, then, is a stark difference. This version targets 1080p docked and 720p handheld. Obviously, both of these are dynamic targets, but my impression is that the docked experience seemed to be consistently above 720p. I've so far only seen off-screen footage of the handheld experience, but this too appears to be much closer to 720p than 240p. The draw distances have been pushed out significantly for trees and other foliage. I noted in my original review of the 2018 version that I felt the pop-in of large trees, especially in handheld mode, made the game borderline unplayable in certain settings. Giant trees would be solid 2D billboards until you got within a few feet of them, making forested areas an unnavigable sea of completely opaque green blobs. This new version appears to have a much less invasive LOD system for foliage. According to Jordan, they were able to make use of developments Epic had made for foliage rendering in Fortnite thanks to both games running in Unreal Engine 4. In fact, advancements in the engine itself, in addition to Grove Street Games' grasp of mobile hardware, seems to have been a major factor in the success of this port. Grove Street Games previously developed the mobile version of ARK, along with mobile versions of other open-world games like Bully and various Grand Theft Auto titles. They also created a short-lived HD version of the Conduit for the NVIDIA Tegra, meaning there is already an HD Tegra-compatible version of that game just waiting for Sega to make the magic happen on Switch. But back to ARK. When I asked Jordan and Vince how they approached this port, they said they started by looking at reviews. From there, they made a list of exactly what reviewers like myself had critiqued, and simply started working down the list, looking at what they could fix. This included things like the loading screens, which I originally clocked at around 3 minutes on average. In fact, while recording footage of the 2018 version for this video, I was able to boot up Mario Kart Tour, collect and send greeting coins to my friends, and complete a race, all before ARK was able to load. Meanwhile, the loading screens I was able to see on this new version were sitting between 15 and 20 seconds. It is a monumental improvement. There's a lot planned for this version of ARK post-launch, including a steady rollout of events and all of the extra maps that the Switch version had been missing out on up to this point. I'm very interested to see where this version of ARK goes, and I look forward to digging deeper into the full version of this update once I have final code in hand. This update for ARK Survival Evolved will be free for all owners of the Switch version of the game, and is planned for release on October 25th. Keep an eye on NintendoWorldReport.com for further coverage, and you can also follow me on Twitter using the handle on screen, as I will be testing out the full version of this update in October.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.